Professor Gabriel Selassie for History 11. I'm going to just give you a brief, about a 10-minute video on the quizzes. So this is an orientation to the quizzes that you'll be taking this semester on Canvas. So I'm going to log in to Canvas. And if you're still unfamiliar with logging into Canvas, there is a Canvas orientation video that you can use to log in. And I'm going to, once logged in, I'm going to the tab for the course. And don't worry about the section number that you see up here. For all of my courses, everything works the same way. The quizzes are not the same for each course because that's rather obvious. But the section numbers are immaterial. The information for the quizzes and the orientations are all the same for every course. So what you want to do, just to give you some idea of the quizzes that you're going to be taking, you want to click on to the quiz tab in Canvas. There's the quiz tab, so if you clicked onto that, then what's going to pop up are the assignment quizzes. For this course, there are only 2 quizzes. There is a midterm exam and a final exam. Each of the exams are 25 questions, and the purpose of the exams is to test your knowledge of the chapters that you have been reading for the course. There are no questions in the exams on the extra readings that you've had to do. It is only for the chapters of the textbook. And there is an orientation video that I have for the textbook, so in the reading, so you'll be able to look at that if you want some more information about that. But for right now, we're just talking about the quizzes. So for the midterm exam, we have the exams open up at a certain date, and they close at a certain date. And they are worth 100 points and the total number of questions. So for the midterm exam, this one is opening up on October 28th and closing at November 12th. If this were a spring semester, there would be a different due date. So for whatever semester that you're into, there might be a different date. So you need to make sure that you check with Canvas. This video might be used for a different semester. So if you see October and it's the spring semester, don't get alarmed. I'm not going to make 400 different videos for each semester because all of my quizzes are just the same for each one. And if I need to change the exams, then I would change the videos. So the midterm exam, what you're going to do is you're going to click on it, and it gives you a summary of the exams. Now, the exams themselves are intended to test your reading, reasoning, and comprehension of the material that you're going to be reading. Now, when you take the exam could be comprised of matching, choosing the right question as in terms of fill in the blank, or it's just multiple choice. It's standard exams, no different than what you would take in an in-person course, right? So there's nothing really that needs to be self-explanatory. If you've gone to high school, you know about how exams are. They're across the board, and it works the same way with college. For my exams, I tend to have 1 or 2 questions that might be fill in the blank, 1 or 2 questions that might be multiple choice, etc. I tend to mix things up. But they're fairly straightforward. Now, what you need to know about this is that when you read the question, there might be some closely related answers. And what I'm trying to get you to do is to think about the question, right, and to choose the best answer. There might be a question that has an answer listed that might be relatively close, but it may not be the best answer. It might even be what we might argue a correct answer, but you might have 2 correct answers on the exams, but I'm looking for you to choose the best. Here in college, what we're trying to get you to do is to think, to reason, to comprehend, to use a little bit of imagination, and to use a little bit of knowledge and that sort of thing that you'll need to have for the rest of your life. So, therefore, you need to choose the best answer. Now, what I would highly ask you to do is to read the chapters at least twice before you proceed with taking the exams. Now, the points are for each exam are 100. The exams last about 90 minutes, which is typical for a college level course. And for the midterm, you will have an opportunity to take the exam twice. So if you take the midterm exam and you don't do so well on it, you'll be able to take it again twice. And the reason why I'm allowing you to take the midterm exam twice is because the midterm exam is going to cover a large number of chapters. The bulk of the chapters for the course will be covered in the midterm exam. So that way, if you take do the course or take the quiz and you don't score as high as that you wanted, you can take it again, and Canvas will keep the highest score. Now, you won't be able to view the answers to the quizzes until your last attempt, and that's rather obvious because if you take it once and you see the answers, then you'll just be able to write down the answers and then take the quiz, and that would be it, right? And so what would be the fun in that? So the idea here is that you'll have 2 attempts. Now, just as a note, you'll only have 1 attempt to take the final exam, right? Because we're covering such a shorter amount of material. Now, you're going to see only 1 question at a time, and you won't be able to see 4 or 5 different questions. The midterm exam will open up on October 28th at midnight, and it will stay open until November 12th at midnight. So you have quite a number of days to be able to do this. So let's see, October 28th, that is on essentially on the midnight on the 28th, and that gives you at least maybe 15 days to take the exam once and then take it again twice. Okay, now in a second, after I go over the final exam, then I will lead you to in the file section, we'll go over essentially what's going to be on the exam, and I'll show you where you can find out that information, right? So I try to give you as much help here in getting through these exams as possible. Now, let's go back and click on quizzes. Let's go to the final exam, and as you can see here, the final exam opens November 26th, closes at December 17th. That's the official last day of the college at 11:59. It's worth 100 points, and again, 25 questions. So if we were to click on that, again, I'm telling you here that you want to choose the best answer, and then you will only have 1 chance to take the final exam. Again, this one is, I've given you a little bit more time to take this exam, 150 minutes, because you only have 1 shot to do it. So, and of course, since it's the final, and the finals, you're typically given more time. So I've given you more time for that. And again, you will only be able to take the exam 1 time. There are not multiple attempts for the exam. Okay, now what I want to do is, and let me just say this, and this is a fair warning to everyone. A lot of students will go onto Canvas, and what they'll do is that they will try to see what's on the exam, so they'll click on the exam to start, and they'll try to close the exam and say, well, then let me try to reopen it since I really didn't take any of the questions. Do not do that. If you do that, the Canvas will see that that was an attempt, to take the exam and you'll get a 0 score. I have students that click on the exams, they get called by their friends, they watch something on TV, their parents, what have you, they walk away and they forget that Canvas is open, their computer, for whatever reason, shuts down, they're logged out. That's going to count as a try. Do not take these exams unless you have the time and are prepared to take them. You will not be given any chance to retake the exams if your computer crashes, if your computer fails, if somehow you press the wrong button and somehow the computer, for whatever reason, just doesn't do what it's supposed to do and it logs out. No. And the reason why you're not going to be given a chance to do that is because there are some of you that are extremely honest people, and that you will have something tragic that happens with your computer. I understand that. But then we also have some students, and let us just say, to keep it real, that are not so honest, and they will claim that they have some problem with their computer and they just weren't prepared to take it, and they ask me if they can retake the exam, and the answer to that is always no. And why? It's just to keep everybody honest. You know that the exam is coming up. If your computer is on the fritz, you know that your computer is just not working out. Go to the library. Borrow someone's computer. Come to LA City College and I will give you a laptop, right? And you can sit down in one of the offices and take your online exam. All I am saying here is that make sure that you are willing, able, and ready and able to take the exam before you click on it that says open. There will be no redos for these quizzes. Okay? Now, what you want to do is that you want to go to the file section. And within the file section, if you scroll all the way down, there is a folder that says study guides. What you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to then click on the study guide, and in that study guide, it's going to tell you in detail what's going to be on the exam. And so the way this is broken down is when you click on that, of course, this will open up, and I encourage you guys again to download all of this. And it will basically tell you that the guide is intended to be comprehensive, and that you should read all the material twice. And it tells you for the midterm exam all of the chapters. Now, you're saying, well, that's a lot of chapters here because it's 1 through 13. How can I know all of that information? Well, you're not intended for you to memorize everything. That's why I've given you the study guide. There are, again, 25 questions for the study guide, and I've given you here a list of what you need to know. So, as an example, now, this may change from class to class, but for your particular class, whatever study guide that you download is going to be the study guide that is appropriate for your exams, okay? So this one, as an example, says the aspect of Christopher Columbus's journey to the Americas. So when you are reading the chapter and you get the background to English colonization, you want to pay special attention to Christopher Columbus. So you should be taking notes. Right? Who is Christopher Columbus? Where did Christopher Columbus come from? What were the dates that he sailed? What were the ships that he sailed on? Keep some copious notes. The next question, what was the primary cause of the destruction of Native Americans? The text talks about in detail the causes of the destruction of Native Americans. Write some notes. Take some notes. Native American and property rights. What was the Native American attitudes towards property rights? Write that down. Who were the Rhine Valley settlers? You should have some idea about who these people were. Who was John Locke and his views on government, right? What is republicanism? So the book gives a detailed account of republicanism. So you should be taking copious notes based on what I have in the study guide. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sit down when you take your exam. It's open book. It's obviously, because I can't tell you not to open up your book because I can't see everyone. So you have your book, you have your notes, you take the exam, and you can easily get through the exams just on my study guide and on the readings. Now, and it's the same way for the final exam. The final exam has fewer chapters, 25 questions, and so when you're reading, you should understand the geography of slavery in the United States, right? Slavery was primarily a Southern institution, so you should know what is the difference between the North and the South. Where was slavery located? There are maps in the book. You should know what was the theory of nullification. It talks about that in great detail. It has information on blacks and citizenship. Harper's Ferry, Raid, and John Brown. Who was John C. Calhoun? His tactics to justify slavery, right? What happened after the Napoleon Wars? What was the Louisiana Purchase? All of these details here are in the exam, and if you know this information, you will pass, guaranteed, the exams with flying colors. I guarantee it. Now, let me just say this about taking the exams and doing the readings. There are two particular aspects about college that are completely frustrating, and I know they are because I went to undergraduate and I have my degrees in graduate school and in degrees in undergraduate school. So I know you have to balance this thing between when you need to take exams, what is the information that I need to know to be able to pass these exams, and then what is the information I need to know just because I need to have some information in my head to call myself an educated person. And I will just say this. You have to be able to pass your exams, but you don't ever want to come out of college not knowing anything. You ought to know who Christopher Columbus is. You ought to have some idea who John Locke is. You ought to know what republicanism is, because the United States is a republican form of democracy. You ought to know who Thomas Jefferson is. You ought to have some idea about British tax legislation, the various aspects of the Virginia Company. You ought to know about slavery, the Mexican War, Harper's Ferry, and John Brown. You ought to have some basic working knowledge of this if you're going to call yourself an educated person. So the way that this course is set up in two fundamental ways. The course is entirely set up, and I'll explain this in great deal when I go over the syllabus, but the course is essentially set up for you to be able to think on one hand and to be able to take information and pass exams, right? Because the state of California says that you have to take a final, and so I have a final that just asks you basic exams, questions, and also I want to make sure that you are actually doing the reading, so that's why the exams are there. I only have 2 of these exams simply because, you're doing lots of other things. Most of you are taking a bunch of other classes. You're working, you've got family issues, or you're traveling, etc., etc. So by and large, this course is intended to help you, not to hurt you. So, but you ought to be able to digest some information and have some working information at your fingertips. You ought to know who Abraham Lincoln is, right? That's just kind of self-explanatory and really not worth even going into greater detail with. But I think that you should be able to understand that basic principle and fact. Now, also, let me go back here to the files. Let me go back here to quizzes. The quizzes, if you notice, that we said earlier that there are 2, but I also have extra credit quizzes. I know that some things happen. You take an exam, you don't do well on it, and let's say that you get a C, but you were like 4 points away from getting a B. and you really are working hard, but you don't know what happened, take the extra credit. The extra credit, it's the same way. They are intended for you to choose the best question. The exams are worth 5 points each. They are 30 minutes long. You can't retake them and you can't even challenge them. So if there's something about them that you don't agree with, you can't challenge the extra credit. You can always challenge the midterm and final quiz, but not the extra credit. I do this as a favor to you because I know that a lot of you have a lot of things going on in your lives, and sometimes you just need a helping hand here so you can take these extra credit points. And let's say that you're just 5 points away from an A, take an extra credit exam, score those 5 points, and you get an A, right? So they're intended. Now, these extra credit quizzes, we're going to go back to File here. And as you can see here, I have extra credit readings. The quizzes are based on extra credit readings, Carroll Quigley's Cultural Evolution of Civilizations, and Race and Manifest Destiny by Reginald Horseman. So you're going to read these two documents, and then you're going to take the extra credit quizzes, right? So why? Because what you'll do when you read Carroll Quigley, you'll learn a little bit about how civilizations ebb and flow. If you read Race and Manifest Destiny, you'll learn a little bit about the treatment of Mexicans during the Mexican War and how we viewed Mexico and what started the Mexican War, and this idea of manifest destiny, how European Americans saw it as their duty to sweep across the nation and colonize Native Americans and push out Mexicans from the Southwest and the West, and to make America from sea to shining sea, right? So there's really good information here that will kind of help support what you've been learning in the class, and you'll do that for the extra credit. Okay, and that is essentially it for the quizzes.